So, you're probably wondering why I'm all bleh. I imagine this is one of the more liked episodes of Voyager. And it's easy to see why. It's an episode that contains Reginald Barclay, and it's an episode that does some pretty clever stuff. We don't actually see the crew of Voyager for, I think it's like 33 minutes or something like that into this episode. We just see the holographic version up to then. And there's a lot of little details, which, thanks to the director, actually are pretty cool. Like, for example, the fact that everyone is wearing outfits that they probably would have been wearing 5 years ago, assuming nothing changed. Civilian outfits for the Maquis, which is a nod back to Michael Pillar's whole thing. Different rank insignia, different hairstyles, all that fun stuff. It's some good stuff. And, of course, it's Dwight Schultz. How can I not like Dwight Schultz, right? You know what irritates me most about this? Peter Harkins. Peter Harkins, if you don't remember, because you're not watching these episodes as I go with them, and I don't blame you, is the jackass commander who is in charge of the Pathfinder project, the project to try and reconnect with Voyager. And he is Barclay's superior officer, and he is the main antagonist for this episode. And I do mean antagonist in the most serious sense of the word. I actually have something written on here that I can't say out loud because I have a policy against cussing. In real life, in addition to my show. I hate this guy. I hate this guy. I want to smack him in the face until the blood stops coming out. Oh my god, this guy is such an obstinate person and serves no purpose other than to provide artificial drama. So he's an irritating character, and he's an artificial plot device. An example of bad writing. I have to look at the writers and say, why was it not sufficiently dramatic to have Reginald Barclay try to deduce his way and work his way through trying to connect with Voyager across half the freaking galaxy? There's plenty of drama you can have just from that. You don't need random bad guy Starfleet officer jackass over here. Now, I know, this is Starfleet. We know they have tons and tons of people, just like, I already forgot his name, Peter Harkins, just like Peter Harkins throughout the whole of Starfleet. And, I've talked before about the idea of the obstinate bureaucrat type character, and that is very much what he is being in this one. And forgive me for just launching into this immediately first thing, but there's this great scene. Dwight Schultz is an amazing actor, first of all. Absolutely love him. He is doing the stuttering thing. I'll talk about that in a moment. He's doing the stuttering thing, and he's trying to apologize and be polite and diplomatic and passive, but Harkins just keeps shutting him down, and finally, Barclay actually stands up for himself. He says, you have to listen to me. I don't care what you do to me. You need to listen, you need to give me some respect on this. You need to give me some of this. He actually stands his ground and approaches him. He stops stuttering when he does that. When he gains the self-confidence to speak normally, he stops stuttering. And then Harkins threatens him and basically does the Starfleet equivalent of firing his ass. He threatened, and then after that, he threatens to call security on him. God damn it, I hate the first chunk of this episode. You know why I hate the first chunk of this episode? Because of Peter Harkins. I originally was going to have this big speech here about how Reginald Barclay was misrepresented in this episode. I've decided not to. Because when I turned on analysis mode, it made perfect sense. This is the first... Well, that's a total lie. This doesn't happen to me that often, when I see an episode in an entirely new light, because I had analysis mode turned on. It used to piss me off so much that they basically smashed down the reset button on Barclay's character growth. Remember, he had a fairly large amount of character growth on TNG. He started off basically exactly how he's presented in this episode, with a couple of exceptions. But then he grew. And he got more confidence, and he got more coordination with the crew, and he started to get closer, and they actually became friendship, and in his own words, they became his family. Even when he would make slight cameos later, he had a great deal more confidence, and he was much more comfortable around people. He had grown as an individual. It used to piss me off so much that they would just reset button all that. But I don't think they did. As much as Harkins is an example of bad writing, and I don't know how much of this is about the writing and how much of this is Dwight Schultz being Dwight Schultz, but Barclay is exactly on point here, and he lays it out when he talks to Deanna. By the way, I don't have anything to share about Marina Sirtis in this episode. She's there. She does a good job. Moving on. Imagine for a moment, and I imagine a lot of my viewers will be able to sympathize with what I'm about to say. Lord knows I do. Imagine for a moment you have difficulty getting along with other people. Doesn't matter why. Doesn't matter if there's something with you that's different than other people. Doesn't matter if you're an introvert. Doesn't matter if you're shy, which is a different thing from introversion. People tend to think introverted people are shy. It's not actually true. An introverted person is just different. I don't even feel like getting into that. Point being, imagine if you're one of those people like Barclay. Now imagine that you are assigned to the flagship of Starfleet, the Enterprise D. And later, the Enterprise E, actually, it's worth noting. And you are actually a damn good engineer. One of the things I liked about his portrayal back in TNG, and I'll mention this when we go through his first episode, is he's there for a reason. He's not just random geek guy. He's not just random loser. He's a damn good engineer, and he shows his chops constantly. That's another thing that used to piss me off about his portrayal here in Voyager. But I'll talk about that in a minute. So he knows his stuff. He's a damn good engineer. He deserves to be at the flagship. He has earned that post. But he just has the hardest time getting along with people. And it's so horrible that his own superior officer, LaForge, a fairly easygoing guy, doesn't want to have anything to do with him. Remember how Guinan calls LaForge out on that? You remember that? This is like the flagship of the fleet with fairly decent people overall. You know, the crew of the Enterprise D were pretty good folk, especially by Starfleet standards. So the fact that even they were openly mocking Barclay. You remember the scene where Picard accidentally says broccoli on the bridge while congratulating him, right? You know how Riker was mocking him and making fun of him? I mean, even Wesley was, for God's sakes. But even that crew was treating him derisively. Can you imagine how he was treated back at whatever post he had before this? Back at Starfleet Command? So you have found that group, and you finally found some degree of acceptance. Because they did grow to accept him. He did become a part of the crew in a good way. He became a part of the family, and that's awesome. Then you lose that post. You're reassigned to Earth. Start working on the Pathfinder project, sure. But the way he says it, Dwight Schultz absolutely sells the scene. I feel like I lost my family. And I'm completely saying it nowhere near as good as he does. But, you know, I had no other way to cope. I had no other way to deal with it. I made my own new family with the Voyager crew. And yet, here's the thing, and here's why I say this is good, as opposed to bad. This is how my opinion has changed. Because how many of you out there in that position would act like Barclay does in this episode? Timid, stuttering, nervous, uncertain, lacking in self-confidence. Because not only have you lost your family, you've been shoved in with all these other Starfleet assholes. Yeah, I'm saying it. That's much less severe than what I have written down on that paper over there, but still. Remember, it took a while for the crew of the Enterprise, who I want to get in, were decent folk compared to most Starfleet. And yet even those people, it took them a bit to actually acknowledge and accept Barclay as a person, rather than just mocking him as an object of derision. So he's back here, and now all of a sudden, he's back to being that object of derision. Because so many Starfleet people just automatically look down on that with that sort of innate natural superiority they've got going. Oh, well, we all should be well-adjusted. Oh, we all should be confident. Oh, we all should be decent. The idea of someone being so, let me be blunt, normal as Barclay, I wouldn't be surprised if it offends most Starfleet officers. So that explains why he's acting so original Barclay here. Because he's basically has been reset in character. He actually has been shoved back where he used to be. He doesn't want to be there. And he shows clearly in the episode he does not want to be back in that place. And as I was paying attention with analysis mode on this time, it made so much more sense because every now and again he breaks back through that and we see the Barclay that has grown over the last... I'm not sure. 8 years? Something like that? It's been a while. The Barclay that has grown over the last almost a decade into a new person starts to shine through every now and again when he gains his confidence, when he's speaking about something he knows about. And in addition to that, doesn't it make sense under those circumstances that he would bond with the ideal, the romanticized ideal of the Voyager crew? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't I? Wouldn't Barclay, of all people, understand what it's like to be all alone, cut off from other people, not being able to have some kind of comfort or, I could just go home and the family will take care of it. Don't you think Barclay, of all people, would understand what the Voyager crew are going through and would empathize with them in addition to sympathize with them? Now, that being said, I still hate the hell out of this episode. I shouldn't say that. I do like this episode. I think I'm going to put this in the net positive category. Dwight Schultz really drags it up, which is good because Peter Harkins really drags it down. Keep in mind that the whole reason that there is a conflict in this episode is... Oh, there's two reasons, excuse me. One is because Barclay hasn't been following proper protocol. And Barclay himself says... Punish me for breaking protocol, but don't punish them. At least try the project. For God's sakes, he's just asking them to try. And when he actually calls them out on that, he's shut down. Barclay set out says, correctly I might add, it costs us nothing to try. And their response is, nope. Shut up, you stupid little man. We're better than you. It's just all over his tone when he says that. And then, so that's the protocol thing. And the other big thing, the other reason he's shut down, the other reason there's an antagonist in this episode, is because Barclay has been regressing towards using the Voyager holodeck as a crutch for his emotional stability. Now, is that true? Absolutely. Does that somehow invalidate his work, which he can functionally prove? No. Does that mean he should be taken off the project? A little more debatable. I'll be willing to acknowledge that that's at least something that should be considered. The idea, however, of literally threatening him and then threatening to call security on him and telling him to go the hell home and get counseling, you're off the project, which has a limited time before it will never be able to be done again because of the wormhole closing. Remember, they're on a ticking clock here. Is it no wonder Barclay felt the need to break in and do something himself? He is, quite frankly, the hero here, and I mean that in the literal sense of the word, because he was willing to, at great personal cost and sacrifice, do what was needed to be done when other people were trying to persist in not allowing him to do that. Harkins was the villain here, I'm sorry. There's one cool moment towards the end where like, the transmission starts to go through, and Harkins is immediately like, quick, help me fix it. And I just want to smack him so hard when he says that. It's like, if you had just listened to Barclay like 30 minutes ago in episode time, it's days in real time. If you just listened to Barclay, maybe you could have actually figured out that he actually has a frickin' brain before now. Maybe, just maybe, that might have gotten through your thick, gelatinous skull. I'm sorry. It's unnecessary drama, and that's why it pisses me off so much. Especially since it's typical. Remember how I've mentioned before how there has to be a threat of the week in just about every episode? And how I fought against that idea for years. And people on Voyager have fought against that idea for years. But they had to have the threat of the week. And so Harkins was written to be an asshole, so he could be the threat of the week. Even any legitimate point he may have, and there are a couple, if I'm being completely fair and unbiased, even any legitimate point he has he does not pursue in any manner. He just flat out lays down the law and flops his dick out on the thing and says, "Here, mine's bigger. Go away, Barclay." I want to smack him so hard. Right in the face. I guess that's not a smack. I'll give him the Rick Berman treatment. But I still like this episode, because Dwight Schultz is amazing. His presentation of Barclay is way better than I ever realized it was. And there's these great scenes with Admiral Paris. I'm glad they got the same actor, and will continue to get the same actor in the future, where we see just how much he really does care about the situation. Of course, absence makes us fonder and all that fun stuff. But it was a very nice payoff. This is basically the culmination of the Tom and his father character arc. One that has been building over several episodes across the last 5 years of television. They've actually been building this basically since the original episode, since Caretaker. It was last brought up in 30 Days, actually, I believe, was the most recent time. And so there's something great that McNeil does, Tom Paris's actor, where the Admiral says, "Tell my son that I miss him and I'm proud of him," and you could just see how hard it is for the Admiral to say that, which makes sense given all the characterization we've had for him in the past, all the discussions about how he's hardline Admiral, and we see that in this episode. He is very much the protocol Admiral, so it was difficult for him to admit that, and then Tom hears that and is just, he can't even speak, can't even say anything. Brilliant scene. So, very heartwarming, very human. Yeah, I guess that's actually all I have to say. I'm sorry, I don't have much else to analyze. Except for one question I have for you guys. This is a doozy. Do you think what Barclay was doing was wrong? I'm not here to lay any judgment, by the way. I just want the issue discussed. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say holodecks are a thing in real life. Okay, you with me? Let's say you can hop onto that holodeck and have the friendship / family / support network that you really want. Now, I am, of course, presuming that you do not have such a thing in real life. I am actually incredibly blessed myself in real life to have an amazingly loving family and friends who are there for me and have been there for me many times. I also know what it's like to not have that support network at certain parts of my life, so I can at least understand what that's like, being without. I imagine at least some of you out there, either now or at a point in your time, understand what it's like to be without. So let's say you can make that. Boom. Perfectly designed for you in the holodeck. Is that a bad thing? A good thing? Neither? I bring this up because one of the most common ideas in Star Trek itself, that Star Trek itself brings up in regards to this, is they're not real, so it's not real, and therefore it's unhealthy. And I could absolutely see where that's coming from. If you got a little bit too attached to your Shepard, for example, in Mass Effect, like way too attached, I could see that as being unhealthy, and I could understand that concept. Because, it's still a video game character. And that's exactly what characters on holodeck basically are. Video game characters. They're just really advanced ones. So, yeah, I guess that's it. I'm just laying out the facts here. I'm just presenting them before you. Star Trek always clearly and distinctly takes the view, their holodeck characters, unhealthy. Okay? What's your perspective on it? I'm not going to give mine. Mine's irrelevant. Nobody wants to hear my thoughts and opinions. But I bring this up because this is, interestingly enough, a segue. Because next week is Fairhaven. Dear God, Fairhaven. Looking forward to reading your comments on this one. I'll see you around, guys.